welcome to today's live chapter reading of Repair, an Everyday Heroes World novel by Trish Williford, brought to you by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue. Charlie. Sitting in the passenger seat of my brother's truck, I turn and look out the back window to find the funeral procession stretching as far as I can see. That's not unusual when there's a funeral for one of our own in Sunnyvale. Most are here because they are truly expressing their condolences. The others are because they're nosy as hell and need something to gossip about. Jude watches the road in front of him carefully as he slowly drives towards the cemetery. I already know what's going through his mind. Do you think Tank is okay to drive? I ask him. Trent Tank Easton is Jude's best friend. He has been since shortly after I was born. His father, Jack, passed away earlier this week of liver disease. Jack had been an alcoholic since his wife, Vera, died in a car accident when Tank was 10. Tank has now lost both his parents, and with no other family in the area, I'm concerned about him. Earlier in his life, Jack was known as a football all-star in high school. He was the quarterback and helped the team win the state championship during his senior year. Jack received a full ride to UCLA, but turned it down when he found out Vera was pregnant with Tank right after they graduated. Jack coached Pee Wee and high school football, and once Tank was old enough, Jack put a football in his hands. That's how Tank got his nickname. He was much bigger than the rest of the kids, and Jack had to keep a copy of Tank's birth certificate with him at games to prove his age. One of the parents said he was built like a tank, and the name stuck. Jude sighs with frustration, a sound I've grown to know all too well over the course of my life. That asshole is stubborn, Charlie. I told him at least 20 times I would drive him today, but he said he'd drive himself. He waited until last night to ask Dad and I to be pallbearers, and that was by text message. Tank has kept to himself since his dad died, and he's pushing everyone that's trying to help him away. It's infuriating. Jude's need to help those around him is embedded in our family's DNA. Our father was a firefighter until he retired earlier this year, and our mother is a social worker. Jude followed Dad's footsteps and joined the fire company right out of high school. My other brother, Dane, is deployed as a medic paratrooper in the Army. I've too decided to go into public service, as I'm currently working on my Master's of Nursing at the University of Colorado, Denver. I only have 2 semesters left until I get my degree and can sit for my NCLEX, which is the nursing boards. Like Mom told you yesterday, it's normal for anyone grieving to isolate themselves. You have to give them some space. It's as hard as it is for you to leave him alone, you have to respect his wishes. If he needs you, he'll let you know. I try to assure Jude. It sucks being a fucking fixer, he huffs under his breath. As I agree with him, the procession is arriving at the cemetery and the hearse stops by the burial plot. Jude parks his truck and hands me an umbrella. It looks like the sky's about to open up. I need to meet the others at the hearse. Mom exits her car at the same time, and we walk the short distance to the grave site arm in arm. She and I have always had a close relationship, and since I've been away at college, it's only gotten stronger. Thank you for coming home early from school to help me get things ready for the wake. I'm sure Tank will be happy to see you made your apple pies. You know how much he loves them. I'm not sure there's anything that would make Tank happy right now, Mom. There's nothing we can say or do to help him feel better. It's a terrible feeling, I tell her. Mom squeezes my arm and gives me a warm smile. It is. That's how you can tell you really care about someone. Mom, don't. Charlotte, there's nothing wrong with still having a crush on Tank. There's something about your first love. Leave it to my mother to bring up the fact that my first crush ever was on Tank Easton while we're at his father's funeral. It's quite cliche, a little sister having a crush on her older brother's best friend, but I couldn't help it. Tank is known around town for being the tall, broody, short-tempered ass with a chip on his shoulder. If they knew anything about Tank, they would know there's a reason behind his temper, although I'm not excusing any of his actions or the trouble he's gotten into. Under that tough exterior of a man is a kid that's been mentally abused and neglected by his alcoholic father since his mother died. The Tank I know is gentle and caring and protective, and he's made me feel that way my entire life. I don't have a crush on him anymore, Mom, I try to convince her. And myself. As Jude predicted, the rain begins to fall shortly after the pastor starts his eulogy. Tank stands beside the casket, refusing the umbrellas offered him. I watch his expressionless, handsome face as raindrops drip off his square jaw. His broad shoulders sag in defeat, and his vacant eyes don't leave the casket as the pastor recites scripture and gives everyone in attendance words of comfort. The pastor asks for everyone to bow their heads in prayer, and while most do, I keep my focus on Tank. His gaze lifts from the casket and scans the crowd. I know I should lower my head, but I can't. Tank's chocolate eyes find mine and stop, causing me to breathe a little faster. I'm unable to look away, and he ends up holding my gaze the entire length of the prayer. I wish I knew what he was thinking, what he was silently saying to me inside his head. Eventually, the pastor welcomes everyone to gather at the community building downtown for the wake, and most people scatter to their vehicles to escape the rain, including my parents. A few stick around to speak with Tank, and it's apparent from the tight, small smiles he's offering that he's uncomfortable. Tank's never been one for attention. He looks over the shoulder of a man that's speaking to him and finds me, and I'm surprised with what seems to be relief comes to his face. He excuses himself from the gentleman and walks over to Jude and I. "You okay, man?" Jude asks, trying to get Tank to huddle under the umbrella with us. He's soaked to the bone, but still refuses the coverage. "Actually, I need you to do something for me if you don't mind," he says to Jude. Jude is too willing to comply. "Of course, anything. I need to change and take a breather. Will you take care of everyone at the wake until I make it there?" "Sure, we'll see you in a bit. Come on, Charles." Jude nods to the truck. "I was hoping Charlie would drive my car for me. I'm a little out of it," Tank says before looking at me. "That is, if you don't mind." "She doesn't mind at all," Jude offers too freely, as if I'm a possession he's lending out. "I'll see you two at the wake." Jude leaves me with the umbrella, and he jogs through the sheets of rain to his truck. Holy crap. What did I just get myself into? The realization that I'm about to be alone with Tank causes my heart to thump violently against my ribcage. Taking a deep breath, I turn back to him and hold my hand out. "Keys." Tank doesn't hand them over, but leads me to his car and opens the passenger door for me. "Get in." "I thought you said..." "Just get in, Charlie," he says tiredly. He takes the umbrella from me, then shuts the door once I'm inside. He rounds the front of his car and slides into the driver's seat a moment later, silence filling the inside of his car. His line of sight is fixated on the burial ground custodians, beginning to lower the casket into the ground. No one should watch their parent being buried, so I move in front of his face to block him from seeing it. His jaw flexes and he lowers his head, and it's all I can do not to reach over and grab his hand. "Let's get out of here, okay?" He nods, and after a long moment, he slowly drives away from the gravesite. He offers no conversation during the ride to his apartment complex, and I allow him to his thoughts. There's not much I can think of talking about other than his dad, and that's the last thing I want to bring up. When he puts his car in park outside his building, he finally acknowledges me. "I'm going to change really quick. I'll be just a minute." He doesn't wait for me to reply and shuts the door behind him. Why did he ask me to ride along with him? He didn't let me drive, and he hasn't mumbled more than a sentence since leaving the funeral. I'm not sure what I expected, but to uncomfortably sit beside him in silence wasn't it. He returns dressed in jeans and a hoodie, and I'm surprised that's what he's chosen to wear to the wake, but I'm not about to judge. Without a word, we're back on the road, and I'm thankful that in less than 5 minutes, we'll be at the wake and out of his car of awkwardness. His car sails right past the community building that's hosting the wake, and I look at him with confusion. "You passed the wake?" A small smile forms on his face. "We're blowing it off, Charlie. I'm taking you home to change, and we're going to find something to get into." My mouth drops, and I hear my heartbeat in my ears. "We?" "That is, if you don't have any other plans." He stops at the red traffic light and looks over to me. "I don't want to be alone. I'd like your company." I'm floored at his confession, but shit if it doesn't make me nervous as hell. "Sure, but don't you want Jude too?" A hard chuckle escapes his throat, and he turns his attention back to the road. "No." Almost every single person, Jude included, has looked at me with sympathetic eyes since Dad died, and I don't want their fucking pity. You've been the only person that hasn't viewed me as a broken kid, and you have no idea how much I needed that. Thank you. It feels strange to say, "You're welcome," so I don't say anything at all. Is this what the afternoon is going to entail? Forced conversation and me stumbling in my mind how to reply to his conversation? When I don't respond, he turns to me with a frown. How can someone still look so handsome while in mourning? "Are you scared of being alone with me, Charlie?" Scared? No. Excited and nervous and anxious and every other feeling in the world? Yes. I'm not scared of being with you, Tank. I never have been. You should be. His warning, although immediate, comes out in a soft whisper. How much longer until you graduate? Tank asks before shoving french fries in his mouth. We drove 2 hours north of Sunnyvale and ended up in a small dive bar where it's apparent by the gawking looks from the other patrons that we're the only two non-locals in the establishment. Conversation has become easy and we haven't stopped talking in the last hour and a half. Next semester will be my last. I'll have my master's in nursing. Do you like Colorado? The people are nice, but it's freaking cold during the winter. I'll be happy when I can come back to Sunnyvale after college. The waitress brings us another round of beer, and I'm already feeling the effects of the last 2 I consumed. Tank is ahead of me by 2, and he seems just fine. We're going to have to sleep this off in your truck before we can drive home. Feeling it, lightweight? He teases. A bit, I admit. His lips curve upward in that sexy way he always makes my knees weak before he pushes me for more information. What kind of drunk are you? A mean one or funny? Well, I tend to giggle a lot, and my lip becomes pretty loose, so if you want to know what I think about certain subjects, now would be the time to ask. After I say the words, I realize I just opened up all kinds of doors for him to explore. Maybe it's because I want him to, and I'm not brave enough to ask him to while I'm sober. This really gets his attention. He leans back in his chair, clearly amused. Oh, that's tempting. Tell me the grossest thing you've seen during school so far. I don't have to even think about it. I've seen enough elderly testicles to last me a lifetime. The worst are when they get sores from poor hygiene or STDs. Tank's head falls back in laughter. That was the most medically spoken term for old man balls I've ever heard in my life. It's good to see him smile after the events of the last few days. His smile is breathtaking, one of the qualities I find most attractive about him. Look, I can deal with blood and vomit and fluids, but there's something about infected old man balls that creeps me out. STDs are common in the elderly in nursing homes, so I've had my fair share of examining them. However, I suck it up when needed. If someone comes in needing help with a nasty scrotum, that's my job. His laughter is beginning to subside, and he shakes his head at me. You're just like the rest of your family. I know, another fixer. I roll my eyes at the nickname our family has been given. Charlie, do you realize how amazing you and your family are? All of you help people without a second thought, which is so damn selfless. I'm so fucking proud of you. He's being sincere, and I feel redness on my cheeks. Thanks. Charlotte, it takes a special kind of person to help others on their darkest days. It's a lot more than I can say about myself. Don't even, I warn him. He brings the beer bottle back to his lips. Just a grease monkey following in my father's footsteps. Things go sideways and I find comfort with alcohol and get myself into trouble. Daddy would be proud. You are nothing like Jack Easton, I tell him. Seeing him so hurt breaks my heart. I wish there was a way I could take away the pain of the last 19 years. He swallows the beer and puts the bottle back on the table. I'm a fucking mess, so yes, I'm just like him. You're so much more than that and you know it. Says who? Me. He raises his eyes from the tabletop. You? Yes, I've known you my entire life, and you are much more than your father's son. You're determined and smart and brave and caring. Tank, I can go on for hours listing the amazing qualities you embody. You do? Oh, sorry. He stares at me longingly. I don't deserve to be on the pedestal you've always put me on. You do, I argue. I wish I could make you see yourself through my eyes. He doesn't say anything in response, which is about the worst case scenario in my mind. I'd rather him say I'm wrong or he hates my guts. Not knowing what's going on in his complex mind scares the hell out of me. Needing to be in control of something, I nervously peel the label away from my beer bottle. He watches my shaking hands as I crumble the paper and let it fall to the table. Anyways, I still can't believe you're old enough to drink. I'm not a little girl anymore, I remind him. You don't think I haven't fucking noticed? His tone is strained as he rubs his hands over his face. One day you were Charlie and the next you were this. The way he says it makes me feel like I should be offended. Is this bad? It is when your brother's my best friend. If he knew even half of the thoughts going through my head right now, he'd decapitate and castrate me. We sit staring at one another after he spoke the words. In my head, I know he's not the right frame of mind. He's in mourning. He's got alcohol in his system, but deep down, the place in my heart that's always been dedicated to him is praying for him to be telling the truth. The waitress comes to our table, and before she can speak, Tank asks for the check without taking his eyes off me. The sun has fallen when we step out of the bar. You okay to drive? I ask him. I'm in no shape to be behind the wheel, but he doesn't seem affected at all. Actually, no, I'm buzzed and I'm feeling pretty tired. You? I shake my head, which makes me feel dizzy. Definitely not. He nods across the street where there's a rundown motel sitting behind a gas station. Look, it's probably not going to be the Ritz, but we can at least sleep the alcohol off and head home early in the morning. I'll pay for your room. I agree, and we stop in the gas station to grab drinks and snacks before walking into the lobby of the motel. The attendant behind the counter looks to be in his early 50s with yellow, black-stained teeth and grease-back black hair. Evening, folks. Checking in? Yes, just one night, please. I smile politely. He looks up at Tank and winks. You have a pretty one here. I'll set you up with one of the suites for no extra cost. They're secluded to avoid interrupting the other guests. My mouth drops at his insinuation. I step closer to the counter. Excuse me, that is inappropriate on so many levels. We need 2 suites. Calm down. Tank leans down and kisses me on the top of the head. Sweets. Hope you enjoyed today's reading of Repair by Trish Williford. Brought to you by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Have a good night.